Hi there. It's Wednesday, the 26th of January. This will be our last Wednesday this month. It's a wonderful thing meeting with you on Wednesday nights in London at 8 o'clock every Wednesday night. It gives me something to live for. And believe me, having gone through some COVID and the flu and a few other things, there were times when I was wondering whether it was worth getting well because I just wasn't feeling so good then. But I'm so happy to be with you all tonight. You know, it's really interesting. I had last week's based upon three questions that people asked, and I was kind of hoping that I'd get more questions. What I did get was a question in regards to people are talking about what their business plans are for the year for their business. And this individual was pointing out that the international world, the shipping that he had counted on that worked like clockwork all the way up until the last year, it's all in chaos. Everything's a mess. And so what I was asked is, what is your prediction for 2022? Now, the first thing that I'm going to predict is you're not going to see me tonight because for some reason, my camera switches on, but I don't see myself being recorded. What I do see is blades of grass. Now, I want you to know that I'm an actual living being and I am not those blades of grass. But what I do want to talk to you about tonight is prophetic times. You can go into all of the ancient peoples, whether you go to the Dogons in Africa, you go to the Hopi people of the Arizona mesas, you get down to the ancient Mayans who still speak Chickasaw. You can go to Japan or into India or Pakistan. You can go into the jungles of Borneo. It doesn't matter when you start talking to the elders, to the storytellers, to the people who have kept the ancient wisdom alive. They all talk about the same thing. And as the Chinese say in their proverb, may you live in interesting times. That's how they would describe us right now. Now, some of you know that I have a background being part Hopi Indian. Now, the Hopis have a very interesting word. The word is Koyaanisqatsi. And I probably didn't actually pronounce that correctly right. Koyaanisqatsi. The word actually means living in a time of chaos, confusion, and a loss of balance. In their ancient prophecies, they talk about a time coming that will be filled with this massive confusion. People won't be able to make sense. They will have lost who they really are, and they will just be going through the motions of daily living, seeing that things just get faster and faster, only living for the five senses. That's pretty much how they say it. And all the ancient people saw it. And, you know, it might be very interesting that we live in these times, but just think about it. In the last 10 years, let's just go with like the last 10 years, we've had some real changes. We've gone from the Pisces age to the age of Aquarius. We've had people proclaim that we are actually in a great awakening. Because of COVID, people are talking about we're now in a reset. We're in a new normal. Um, we had the end of the Mayan calendar. We have people talking about we're entering into the edge of the apocalypse at this point. The question is what does all this really mean? What does all this really mean for us in 2022? And here's the truth: as odd and strange and as complex and confused as everything appears, let me tell you that according to all the ancient wisdom, it's going to get weirder. Things are going to be more confusing to our senses. It's not going to make sense to us mentally, and things are just going to move faster and faster, and we're going to struggle to try to keep up. And this is all good because it's going to force a lot of people to break away from the chaos. They're going to break away from their own senses and what's going on in their mind. The mind will lose control. Not that they're going to go crazy, but it will lose control over them. Ultimately, we're living in the age of awakening. That's all that there really is going on. Our cages, if you will, are metaphorically being rattled. It's as if we are being shaken from a slumber. The Bible, in the book of John 17:16, it says that we are to be in the world, but not of the world. And yet, what we have going on is a world where people don't feel like they fit in, and yet there are other people who are just going through the motions, and you can see them. They just seem to do the same thing every day. They seem to be in a pattern. There's nothing new or exciting going on in their life, and they're just fitting this pattern. Now, let's just take a moment and think about the Buddha. Now, I was taught in the Tibetan Buddhist system, the Mahayana Buddhism, where his name is Gautama Buddha. And he grew up as a prince. He was the son of a king. His father ordered that his son would only know pleasure. He would only see beauty. He would never see disease or agedness. He would never see anything untoward. And this was pretty much his life. He had a young, beautiful wife. He finally one day was being taken in a carriage through the city. All the handsome, beautiful people were there. They were cheering him on, praising him. And off to the side, he saw a beggar, an old man. And he came back to the palace. He wanted to know about the old man. What was with this guy? He's not young. He's not beautiful. He looked aged and unwell, etc. His father was angry that he had actually seen this man, that this man was not supposed to be present. And so the Buddha, contemplating about this, just seeing that life is all pleasure, there was something wrong because it was only half the story. And so he decided to take on the Janus viewpoint of life, the philosophy of going without, suffering, starving yourself basically to death. I mean, there's a point in there where they say he lived on just one grain of rice for a year or two. And he became basically just skin and bones and skeleton. And he realized that wasn't the way to enlightenment or spirituality. And so the Buddha decided, after coming across Nagas are like snake creatures that are wanting you to do the wrong things. And he stood up to them in a meditative state and realizing that there was a middle path somewhere between pleasure and suffering that everybody could go through. And in this place, you can gain enlightenment. And so I want you to breathe in the idea that you are physically in this world, but you're not spiritually of it. Just breathe it. I am physically in this world, but spiritually I'm not of it. Because that's really the truth. In this time frame, your body is learning that it's not everything. You're not your five senses. You're not sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch only. You're far more than that. You're able to think. You're able to create. You're able to do things. And as you begin to realize that I'm just not this physical being, I'm far more. And so your cages are truly being rattled because what you have forgotten about who you are, who you truly are, you find that you are more of something else than you were with just the five senses. And the turbulence that we're into, that we're going to experience in the next year and in the future, is for our own highest good. It's for our best, because it gives us an opportunity to reframe what is happening to us, because it is not something that's happening to us. It's actually something that's happening for us. Just say that to yourself. All of these things that I'm going through are happening for my good and not to me. You say you're not a victim to the insanity that's going on in the world. We are truly beneficiaries from what is going to be happening in 2022. So what you really need to do is you need to buckle your seat and realize that 2022 is going to be truly a terrific year for you. Those who understand what is happening can catch the flow of the energy, the spiritual energy that's being released, and just allow it to guide you in the next year and beyond. Now you can create more. Just think about the things you want to create: freedom, happiness, opportunity, fulfillment, enjoyment, wealth. Just think of all the things that you could enjoy in this world while many other people are sitting in fear. They're sitting in fear because all they can see is chaos. They can see that life is out of balance, and they only see the physical aspects of what's going on in the world. You access what is within you becoming a higher spiritual awakening. It's literally a path. When you were a baby and you learned to sit up, and then you learned to get on your hands and knees, and then you learned how to crawl. And then after a while, you learned to balance on your feet, and then you learned how to take some steps, and then pretty soon you were running. Well, the same thing is happening to you spiritually at this point. You're just going to start off with baby steps, but what is going to happen is you're going to discover that your mind is free. The constraints that you have on the physical do not constrain your mind. Do not constrain your spiritual being. Do not constrain you. You're no longer controlled by the world. You're free of being stuck in this physical world. You can accept and you can develop access to your own spiritual awareness. Just think about it. Life is no more than sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. You are now breaking free of that matrix and discovering you are far more. In a sense, referencing the movie The Matrix, you are truly being red-pilled this year. If you look in the mirror, who do you see in the mirror? You know, if I were to say to most people, I say, you know, tell me, who are you? People kind of look confused. Now, many years, well, I'm not that many years ago. Give me a decade. A decade ago, if you would have walked up to me and say, who are you? Well, my name is Gary. I'm a psychologist. I work at this location. You know, I had 6 kids. I divorced at this point. I do X, Y, and Z. And I would just give you information about what I do. But if you stop me and say, no, 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 I asked you, who are you? I'd probably look at you and say, well, like I said, my name is Gary. Okay, yeah. I get you. But Gary is not you. Gary is a sound. Tell me about who you are. And you know, they would be right, because Gary is a sound. It's not who I am. It's a sound that I use to give as an identifier to other people. So who am I? And really what it boils down to is I'm a spiritual being in a physical body. I am a spiritual being having an earthly experience. And my earthly experience right now is what the Hopi people call Koyaanisqatsi. That this world is out of balance, that there's confusion, this chaos, this accumulation that everybody is noticing around themselves, watching the stock markets collapse and come back. I mean, the stock market in Russia just totally collapsed the other day. The US stock market lost like 1,000 points in one day and came back. Craziness is going on around the world. Everything is out of balance. And all of this is signposting us into the direction to the path of spiritual awakening by allowing us to connect with our true circle of power. And that's my prediction about what's going on in 2020. Is there going to be war? Who knows? I think it's interesting. So many people are talking about Ukraine right now and Russia. And suddenly everybody stopped talking about Taiwan and China. Yet we're pretty sure that once the Olympics is over, Taiwan and China are going to have a conflict. Not so sure that Russia really wants to invade. I think they just want to saber rattle. It's a lot of wagging the dog right now. It sounds to me like the war drums on the Potomac along Washington, D.C. are beating much louder than any war drums along the Dnipro outside of Kiev. People are just not really into it. So what can I say? My prediction for 2020 is it is going to be turbulent. It is going to be shaking people awake. There are going to be more people who are going to realize that they are not their physical selves, that they are not just a bag of skin that's filled with mostly water, that can touch, taste, smell, hear. You're far more than that. You've always been far more than that. Sadly, most of our education never told us that we were greater than that. That this is the year where we can truly focus on getting in our power and finding other people who are like to us and build networks. one of the things that I am noticing now, and I will predict will grow, is social networking. People will begin to discover that their wealth is not necessarily in the people who subscribe. It is in the network you have developed. And as we learn to work in cooperation, everybody is going to benefit. We live in a time now where people can find information for themselves. They can go back into the internet and they can find articles and pictures and posts that most politicians today don't want to have surface. In fact, they put a lot of money in trying to make things disappear. But if you have Wayback Machines, and people are buying them just for the sole purpose of going back to a date and time before postings were removed to find the original postings when they were there, just so that they can bring it up to the forefront. It just seems like everything is always with us. It's always there with us. And as we become more alive, more awake, more creative, as we develop more of who we are and what we intend to be, we are able to shift from like a sleepwalking drone into a dynamic powerhouse in a circle of their own true power with their own creativity and a sense of direction of where they're going to go, what goals they have set, and then manufacture daily through affirmation, positive action, belief, faith to achieve those goals. So I was asked a question. I hope I've answered it for you. I believe that all of this information is just sitting in the ancient prophecies and the ancient wisdom literature. It doesn't matter what you believe, you can go into the Upanishads and you can find it. You can go into the teachings of the Buddha. You can go into the Tao. You can go into the writings of Confucius. Doesn't matter. All this information is already there. It has already been revealed. People knew this time was coming. The weird thing is people all along the way always thought that it was about them. And maybe it is about another generation yet to be born. But right now, I believe this is a time when we have all of this chaos, all of this confusion, all of this conflict going on outside of us that oftentimes has nothing to do with us, but we attend to it. We give it attention. That this is a time for us to find ourselves, to center ourselves, to build that spiritual being, to break that connection, to say, I'm only a physical being. No, you are a physical being having this human experience as a physical being, but you were always a spiritual being, and that the two of you are connected and combined. But your greatest power is when you connect to your spiritual source. And so that's it for today. I'd love to answer anybody else's questions or to give whatever insights I can give. I'm just curious how many people would agree or disagree. I'd love to see your comments below on the YouTube channel. And as this is going to be posted in the Golden Nugget Nation, I hope people listen and post their statements too. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to write the name something that's interesting for people to I guess learn for the first time is Hopi is not a written language, it's just an oral language. And so when you try to write something in Hopi, it really is best guess because there is no dictionary. So Koyaanisqatsi, don't become a victim to it, but allow it to propel you into the great awakening and become greater than who you ever were. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next Wednesday.